Hey everybody, it's me, Undead Viking. I'm here to tell you about a game that is called Cast and Capture. And actually, this is one of the cards. This is a spell card from the game, and this is a monster card from the game. Now, Cast and Capture is just a card game, obviously, that each person plays the role of a spellcaster trying to capture the creatures. As I said, here's a Carniflora, or a Licorne de Mer, or even a Wind Dragon, if you will. And as these monsters get placed into the battlefield, or in the table, so to speak, you will then you have certain spells that you're trying to match up their power and their element. See, like a Void of Spirit, a Ball of Water, a Storm of Fire. You're trying to match up the number of the spell and the element of the spell to the monster that's out there. And if you can match those, then you can claim that monster. Now, that would be pretty straightforward and pretty simple to figure out, and frankly, it wouldn't be much of a game if it weren't for the fact that you actually are able to meld spells together to turn them into something different. You can take like a Ball of Water and take a Storm of Fire, and you can meld them together and make a Storm of Water. And so you make the 7. You take the 7 from this and the water from this, and you make a spell that's 7 of water for the spell. So if that was enough, you then can actually then also you can also take the chance of melding monsters together. So this Licorne de Mer, which is like a water horse, and this Wind Dragon, you could make this a Wind de Mer, if you will, by taking the power and the element and trading them, if you will. And that's actually important. You need to do that, because if you're just waiting around and hoping that you get the right monster that matches one of your cards perfectly, you're not going to capture a lot of monsters. Whoever captures the most monsters wins the game. Also, on the other side of that is the fact that by combining your spells and by combining monsters, you're able to actually capture more than one monster per turn. But I'll show you how that's done once we go ahead and show you how to play the game, which I may as well do right now. So let me tell you how to play Cast and Capture, and then we'll come back here and I'll talk more about the game. And this is one of those games that, like, as soon as I taught it to my daughter, I saw the little lights go off in her head, and she's really enjoyed it a lot. And this is also one of those games that I take to work with me, because it's a really quick, easy game to play with my buddies at work while we're chowing on our sandwiches or what have you. So, alright, cool. Let's show you how to play Cast and Capture. Alright, I've gone ahead and just set the game up, and I'm going to show you kind of a quick 2-player game of Cast and Capture. Each person, after you set up, there's 2 decks in the game. This is the spell deck, and this is the monster deck. I've played the 3 cards down. You start off with 3 monsters out in the field ready to be captured. And each person will start with a deck of 4 cards. I'll put those over there for the first player, and these will be for the second player. So, each one of these creatures, just to show you one of these, the Tripent, if you will, has a power value, which is 7, and it has an element, which is water. And there are 5 elements in the game. The standard ones you can probably guess: water, fire, earth, and air, and then a 5th element, which is this guy, like the spirit element, which is up here. And the whole goal of this game, as I said, is to capture creatures, and whoever captures the most creatures will win the game. So, we look at the 4 spell cards that you drew, and you don't draw more spell cards until you run out of them, so it's something to keep in mind. So in this case, we have a couple of fire, an air, and a water. And you have to match up, your spell has to match up both of the stats. It has to match both the element and the power in order to capture the creature. So right off the bat, we're looking at this, and we're not going to be able to capture any of these. We don't have a 6 fire, we don't have a 3 fire, we don't have an 8 air, we don't have an 8 water. But don't worry, first things first, we will have to put these over here. You do draw a new monster when you start off. So we do put down, we have an 8 an 8 spirit out there. So unfortunately, we do have an 8s here, but we don't have 8s of spirit. So we're unable to capture any of them that are sitting out there right now. But you are able to blend spells together and blend creatures together, which I'll show you here in just a second. But if you can't cast one of your spells and you can't capture one of the creatures that's available, you have to put a spell into the spell pool, which is basically a communal spell that people can then use to mix the spells. And but you got to watch out and make sure you don't put something out there that is going to be able to help somebody create it. So you got to make sure you don't match up the numbers. So we don't want to discard these 8s and then or elements for that matter. And so these are kind of good cards in this situation because they don't match any of the numbers that are out there, and there is no fire out there as well. So these are pretty useless for combining for a spell pool. So we can go ahead and we can say, okay, since I can't capture one, I have to put a card in the spell pool. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put that 6 of fire into the spell pool. Once I have done that, then it would turn over to the next player. So let's see what they got here. And then the next player, of course, as I said, draws a card. And so they have a 1 of earth, the Bollywoggle. And so now we're going to look at their cards and see what they have here. Okay, so they have a 5 spirit. So they actually got pretty lucky in the fact that this one is out there and they can capture it like so. They have a pillar of earth, a breath of fire, and a pillar of earth, as I said, breath of fire, pillar of water, and a wave of spirit. So as I said, we can capture that guy off the bat, but I'm just going to see here if we could actually figure anything out. Unfortunately, we can't combine 5. Sometimes when you combine the spells, what you do is you combine, you either combine the power of or the spirit of one card, then you combine the opposite of the other. You can't combine 2 spell cards of the same power or of the same element. So if we were combining, which we're not going to do, we could make putting these 2 together, we can make this a 6 spirit, or we can make this a 5 fire. Neither of those really help out at the present time because of the fact that, like I said, we can already take that soul kit. So that's unnecessary. But you can, if luck happens, you can actually combine 2 of the creatures as well. And by doing so, you can change it and then take both creatures at the same time. So let's say we had a 5 of earth. What we could do is we could take this Bollywoggle and we could say we're going to combine this 5 and we're going to make we're going to make this soul kit into a soul woggle, if you will. So it would be a 5 of 5, but also of earth. And then if we had a 5 earth, we can combine and take those 2. But unfortunately, like I said, we don't have that. We can just go straight forward and say we're going to take, with this wave spirit, we're going to go ahead and take both of them, and we're just going to say bam, and you cast the spell, you take the creature, put the spell over here in the discard, off the side, let's put it off the side, and then it goes over to the next turn. So that pillar of fire is still out there, and the first player will go. So remember, they still have these out there, so we're going to hope we get another, like a monster. This is something we can use here. So now we have a 5 of earth. And once again, unfortunately, the first player doesn't have a good combo right now. I mean, well, actually, what we could do is, I just realized this, we can combine the 8 of this into the tripent over here, because we can go, we're going to take this, and we're going to say, it's a will-o'-the-wisp, will-o' the pent. Willow pent, if you will. So what it does is it makes it an 8 of water. And we look and we have an 8 of water. And so you go ahead and combine those 2 together, and now you get both of these creatures. Now the weird thing is that if you had, and I'm going to dig through the deck here and find one, if you had a creature, let's say we had these 3 creatures out here. We had an Aqua Prima, which is an 8 water, and we have these 2 cards, like so. We could combine these 2, like, to make that Willow Pent that we just talked about, and this Aqua Prima. And by playing this 8, you could take all 3 of these creatures with this one spell. And that's where you get the really good combos and you start adding up the points pretty quickly. As I said, as soon as you run out of your spells, by either casting them or putting them in the spell pool. And the spell pool can grow to as many cards as it does. It just will keep growing as long as people are adding cards to it. As soon as you draw 4 new spells out of the spell deck, and the game ends when either nobody can draw any more spells, because you draw 4 cards, or you run out of monsters, you run out of spells. One of the two things. As soon as that happens, you then total up how many monsters you captured, and whoever captured the most monsters wins the game. The game is surprisingly, it was one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, it totally makes sense, combining the stuff. But man, I mean, there were times when I would just be sitting there and I couldn't, it's kind of like playing, when you were playing solitaire and you can't, see the red 9 and that's sitting there on the board, you can move it, you just don't see it in front of you until, you're all of a sudden oh wait, then I can combine these 2 things and take it. It's one of those cool things where, even though the game is simple, it's really tricky and it's really tough. And it's been fun to play this with people, and most importantly, play it with my daughter, which I said. But let me tell you more about Cast and Capture in my conclusion. I'll do that right now. I realized I didn't show you the box this comes in. So it's like this little tiny box. Remember what I said that that this is one of those games I can take to work with me? I have a bag that's actually a bag that I got from the old D-Day Dice Kickstarter, and I got one of the shoulder bag, if you will, and it's my work bag. It's what I take. Now I take my books and my information and my stat sheets and everything else I use in my job, and plus the little carry games that I have that I play at lunch with my buddies. And I always carry between 3 to 5 games. This is one of those games that's made it into the carry bag, and it's been there for a while now. And I call these deceptively complex games. Yeah, from the get-go, you see it and you're like, oh well, this seems pretty straightforward. I just need to play the right cards. But there's so many decisions you have to make between the process that is finding the right card to collect the monster, but setting up possible combos by using the spell pool is a way that I found that it's a gamble, if you will. You're putting a card in the spell pool that hopefully will still be there when it comes around to your turn, and then you can go ahead and combine something else in your hand to use it to claim more of the creatures that are out there. The best part of the game for me, honestly, is when you find that perfect little 3 spot that I showed you, where you have a 5 water, and there's a 5 water monster out there, but there's also another 5 and another water out there that you can combine, and then you can grab 3 or even more cards technically if you got really lucky all at once. And that's kind of the whole point and the efficiency, if you will. Trading 1 spell for 1 monster, yes, it's good and all, but you really need to get those combos, those 2 or 3 combos, to actually win the game, because of the fact that it is a timed situation. I mean, as you burn through your spells, there's only so many draws that you're going to get before that spell deck runs out of cards. And when it runs out of cards, obviously the game is over. And but so you need to make sure that every time you do claim, if you're just doing a 1-for-1 basis, you're not going to win the game. I should have mentioned, I do apologize, the game does have several of these wild cards in it. They have both wild power and wild element cards, and they do just what you think they do. This card can be any element, and this card can be any power number. Obviously, you can't play these cards by themselves because they're lacking the other part to actually claim something. So you have to use them with a spell pool. But these cards are very powerful if you get them, because of the fact that you can just if you wait and you can pounce. This is one of those situations where it's very easy to take 2 or 3 or even maybe possibly, if you're lucky enough, 4 monsters all at once, just because of the fact that you can use it is any number or any element, depending on which wild card you have. So, I mean, those are in there as well. The game, like I said, it doesn't take a long time. It's relatively quick. You can play a game in about 15 minutes. But it's also one of those games where it's like the social aspect of it, because, and not so much that the game is socially endearing. For me, it's one of those games where yes, it is kind of difficult and kind of fun, you know, try to figure out the little combos and try to figure out which cards, you know, can match up. Like I mentioned when I was talking about how to play the game, you know, it's like when you there's like a card that you can take, it's staring you at the face, but you just can't, for whatever reason, grasp it and figure out, take it until you're like, oh wait, I can do this, which I enjoy. But it's one of those games where also the game doesn't consist of everything that I have to think about in the game. Like I said, I played over lunch while I'm eating a sandwich, and I'm listening to my buddy complain about whatever project he's working on that he's trying to get done, or like, you know, some, you know, bureaucratic red tape that he's dealing with at his job and that he's trying to go, and then, you know, or I'm talking about, or we're talking about like the latest episode of Game of Thrones or something like that, and we're having this discussion, and so you're playing the game, and so the game is like a portion of the conversation, if you will, and you know, and it's one of those like fun aspects. It's just, and it's more of like almost like a what my stepfather he plays cribbage constantly, and so that's kind of like the same thing. He doesn't really think about the game that he's playing, but he plays it so he can have a conversation and have fun and have like the purpose to sit down at the table is the game, but it isn't, the game isn't the focus of it, if that makes sense. I hope it does, because I like these types of games. I like games where, you know, it's like when I sit down and play poker with my buddies, same kind of deal. Yes, ostensibly we're there to play and try to win some money or whatever, but I'm also there to enjoy my friend's company and have fun, and the game isn't the point of me being there. It is like the impetus, if you will. So there you go. So Cast and Capture is a lot of fun. I mean, it just because of the fact that it is mildly complex, and and it does make me feel smart when I get those little combos and put them together. And plus, my daughter really likes it, and she's in any game that my daughter says, can you get that game out there with the cast and something or whatever, you know, and anytime she asks to play something, I know that it's a good game. At least for me. And if you have your kids out there, my daughter's almost 8, turns 8 in July. I think this is an excellent game to you know, kind of bridge that gap into that designer you know, board game hobby that you're doing. If they haven't already been brought in, this would be something that I think that they find a lot of fun in as well. So, all right, there you go. That was Cast and Capture. If you have any questions about how to play the game or about the game in general or anything at all, please post those. I'll try to answer those to the best of my ability. And thank you, as always, for taking the time to watch this video. I really appreciate it. And until next time, you have yourself one heck of an awesome day. All right, bye-bye.